Hi, this is Mrs. Germerod, and I'm a science teacher at TF South High School, and today I'm recording a video for you about succession. The root of succession, if you think about it, is succeed. And I want you to think about what does it mean to succeed. And so with human nature, we think about achieving a goal. But I want you to think about succeeding in terms of nature. What does it mean if a species is able to succeed? Really, if we think about succeeding in nature, it means that we have survived and reproduced. We've already talked about that this year. It's something called survival of the fittest or natural selection. So nature selects the things that are best fit to survive in a particular environment. So we need to talk about different ecosystems. There's a ton of them. They get many names. We call them sometimes environments. We might call them biomes, habitats. All of these terms are used to describe the area an organism lives in. The most familiar examples to you might be a desert or a rainforest, but there's also places called the tundra, the grassland or savanna. The oceans are their own biome or ecosystem. Let's think for a second about the rainforest. Its most obvious characteristic is large amounts of greenery, tall trees that stay green and fruitful all year round. In the desert, there are few plants to speak of. Those that do exist have bodies that are highly adapted for storing water or living without much water at all. In our biome, things look much different. If you walk outside, you will see grass, bushes, flowers, and trees. These are all very important of our environment, but there is one other species in our biome that largely determines the success of our plant species, Homo sapiens. Humans largely control what plants grow within their biome. So today I'm going to take you on a tour of my yard so you can see an example of how humans determine what grows here.
And what you'll notice when you first walk outside is that most of it is grass. Or you got to do a lot of work to keep up your grass. And where you don't keep up your grass, you get natural things happening. So right here, you have where there's a lot of mud. And then you have other things like you'll get weeds. And so I'm looking right here. You see, this is not grass. This is a weed. A lot of times people, you'll see they have companies that come out and they treat for weeds. These are more weeds. These are clovers, right? And so they treat for that and they spray for it to keep it all out of your yard so you can have that beautiful, nice green grass.
So if our biome is a forest, how is it that my front yard is all grass? Why is it just grass? And this goes back to remembering what happened if humans did not cut the grass. If we just let our grass grow, what will happen to it? And so if we do that, it'll eventually turn into a forest. But how do we get to a forest to begin with? Where does that all start? How do all these different plants end up in this area? Let me take you to another place in my yard to show you how life in a forest begins.
So here on this rock, you can see that it's green. And then it doesn't really feel like much, just a little bit slimy. All right, this one too, they're green. And so this is the first living thing that enters an area, and it's called a lichen. And what a lichen is made of is a fungus combined together with sometimes with algae and sometimes with bacteria. This is combined together with algae. And so that's the first type of living thing that enters an area. I got it on my hand, see? And so what will happen, okay, I see. What will happen is that this fungus will actually chemically break down the rock and turn the rock, oh, here's some more. It will turn the rock into soil. It takes a really long time for that to happen. Right now we just have these lichens sitting here. All right, but down here you have the most coolest type of plant ever. It's called what? What is it called?
What?
Do you know?
Right there.
It's called moss.
Yeah.
I'll show you. You can just pull it. See, it's growing right there on a piece of rock. It's just bodies in soil. There's no stems. There's a little critter in there. Emma, you're bumping me.
A worm.
A little worm. All right. Right here, a little worm.
Can I see?
Right there.
And under
All right.
here.
So what are we seeing here? We're seeing nature. We're seeing an entire ecosystem. We have the first species to inhabit an area, which is the lichen. And then the second, which is a moss. And then the third, which is the grass.
Wait, no, that one looks dangerous.
All right.
So I took video of more lichens on my rocks because lichens are so important. What we call them is the pioneer species. Pioneer in that they are the first living thing to enter an area. And so first we'll have these lichens, and then we'll have these mosses that you can see growing in the cracks of the rocks there. And then we'll get the grass, and then we'll get some taller plants. And so now I'm going to cut to my backyard.
But I want you to see that as you get closer, away from the grass and closer to the forest, the plants start to get bigger. And so if I walk closer, we have regular grass, and then all of a sudden, we see the weeds on the ground, right? And then we see these shorter trees and smaller plants. You got some plant growth right there. And then you have these huge trees that dominate. Look at the floor of the forest. Now, my son scraped this all out yesterday. He's making himself a little bike path. And so you have bare soil. But on top of that bare soil, all he scraped off is dead leaves. All right, and so those dead leaves are going to decompose and turn into more bare soil. I want you to see that there is no grass on the forest floor. Oh, we have some daffodils over here growing, some daffodils. All right, those are on the outer edge of the forest. They're not in very far. And so the forest, because the trees are going to block the sunlight, once they grow leaves, you don't have any grass that grows on the forest floor.
In the very beginning of this video, I showed you this picture. And in the very background of this picture, you can see those bigger trees. But in the foreground of the picture, you actually have a bunch of pine trees. And pine trees are not part of our stable forest ecosystem. You don't see them in my backyard because they will actually die. They do not last. They do not stick around. Pine trees just aren't part of the Climax community. That's another vocab word we're going to talk about right now. All right, now that you're ready to draw, we're going to start by drawing some bare rocks in the bottom corner, and we're going to do this process of succession. These rocks are going to quickly be covered with lichens. So we're going to draw these light green lichens, and this will represent the mosses as well. And as I told you, they will break down the rock into some soil. So now we're going to use a black, and we're going to draw the soil formation, a little tiny layer of soil on top of those rocks. Over time, dead leaves are going to come and cover that soil and decompose and create more soil. So now I'm drawing more soil. Eventually, tiny little seeds are going to come down and get trapped in those leaves and trapped in that soil and start to grow some small plants. So you're going to use a green color to show small plants, which would include grass. So grass is what we're going to draw first here. And then in the grass, more seeds are going to get trapped and make some bigger plants. So now I have maybe some ferns or some small shrubs that are going to start to grow. Even some flowering plants could grow at this time. Then we're going to get even a little bit bigger. So here's some little bushes. And then eventually the plants will keep getting bigger. So now we're going to draw some trees. These are going to be some smaller trees, maybe fruit trees, like apple trees. They don't live very long, believe it or not. And then what you all think is dominating in our environment, which is the pine tree. But pine trees, as we know, they are not going to survive. The big trees are going to come in, such as maples and oaks and walnuts. These are huge, huge trees, the really tall ones with big shady leaves. And they are going to suck up so much of the nutrients and so much of the sunlight that they are going to take over our forest. And each fall, they go ahead and they shed their leaves. And so them drawing their leaves falling on the ground. And their leaves are going to decompose and cause more soil. But eventually we're going to have this huge forest filled with all these giant, big, leafy trees. And because of that, the pine tree dies and is no longer part of the stable final community. And neither are the small plants, really. And so this right here, what you see now, is what the forest ecosystem consists of. So here it is, the stable climax community of the deciduous forest. This is what our environment would be like here in the temperate part of the United States if humans did not interfere, cut down trees, and destroy our environment.